Good. It's good to be with you. We have quite a few questions, so we'll start with those. The first says, my 15-year-old nephew, the son of my niece, damaged our computer by opening or trying to open a site that he had no business going to. Well, a little surprised what that is. So he went to a porn site. It's going to cost $200 to repair it. She's broke and he doesn't work yet. So how do I teach in this instance? I have some ideas, like he could give up a portion of whatever money he's given or earns at home, and that'll probably take him a year, or him doing work around my house. When he comes to visit again, do I revoke his computer privileges? He's been told not to use the computer downstairs, but he did. And that's where my husband does his taxes and our bills, and he's been told not to go to certain sites. What I don't want to do is punish him. He's in hell enough already, living with my niece. She's deeply afraid. So the kid needs to be loved and taught, just like every child. And because you're not just a casual acquaintance, you're in a position to love and teach him. So he has to feel accepted, but he has to be taught at the same time, because we can't be happy while we're just pampered and irresponsible. Can't be done. So remember, as you do all this, that the purpose is to teach him and to help him feel loved. It's not to get across some point that he's inconvenienced you. So you tell him the cost of the repair. You say, Fred, it's going to cost $200 to repair the computer because of what you did. So you're directly responsible for it. And I'm not irritated about it. And you don't make him feel bad. As you're delivering this, it's the mode of delivery that matters most. So if you're explaining this and you're going, it cost me $200 and we told you not to do this, he's just going to feel shamed and punished. Although it is okay to say, you remember, we told you not to go to that kind of site, but you did, and the consequences are expensive. And rather than our bearing the consequences of your decision, that's not going to work. We're not punishing you. We're simply allowing you to experience the consequences of your decision. Parents all the time are saying, oh, I couldn't do that to my child when it comes to consequences. Excuse me? You see how the perspective is entirely wrong to begin with. You're not doing anything to the kid. You're just not saving the kid from the consequences of his own choices, which is what most parents do. Kid screws up, the parent saves him. Well, he's not going to learn. So then you explain to him that until he repays the cost, there will be no computer use of any kind. Not the computer upstairs, downstairs, or in the parlor. And then give him jobs to do, a way to pay it back, and make them hard jobs. Shoot, I've had kids work off, stuff at my house, and I put him out the back and have him dig ditches, have him dig a hole to China, something. And then he can use the computer again after he's paid for the costs, but only if it's in a place where people can see what he's doing. So it's not about just which computer. He can't use any computer unless people are around, which is really kind of a recommended thing for most kids anyway. And if there are going to be occasions when he's in the house and you're not there, then you would have to password protect your computer so that he would have to know the password, which you would change when he's coming over to get in. And so he'll learn his lesson. He's just paying the price for his choice. Next viewer says, my partner wants to get married, but I'm not so sure. He's been married 3 times before and has 3 children, 22, 17, 14, has been separated from his last wife for 8 years. So there's like a clue there. I mean, if somebody's been married for 3 times, 3 previous marriages, that doesn't mean that it's not possible to have a great relationship, but it at least makes you wonder what went on. So it's certainly worth, if you haven't already, having a discussion about why the marriage has failed. If he can't clearly identify his role in the failure of those marriages, what are the odds that yours is going to make it? You continue. I've been married once and have 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren myself. I've been separated for 7 years. We have a loving and committed relationship with wonderful times of companionship and time to be alone as well with biological family members. We're choosing to be consciously loving, using self-reflection to grow our self-awareness and responsibility for who we are in the relationship. We've been together for 5.5 years. Well, that's a long time. As much as possible, we keep finances separate. We have our moments of upset and misunderstanding, but each of us has been able to stay separate from the other's stuff enough to get back into loving connection. So after 5.5 years of being together, you're still staying separate. You mentioned the word separate, at least 3 times. You go away and separate from each other. You have separate finances. So to me, it just bespeaks a lot of uncertainty. If finances are still separate and you still go your separate ways to kind of stay out of each other's stuff, it just doesn't sound like you're working toward a real union. If the two of you have been living together for 3 months, well then, you'd be just kind of fumbling around and figuring things out. But after 5.5 years and not being entirely together, you're doubting whether marriage is really going to be effective. So there's a disparity between what he says he wants to get married and the way the two of you are, behaving. So now, should you get married? I'll get to that in a second. Then you continue. My partner would prefer that we were married, but I would prefer a commitment ceremony with a gathering of our family and friends. What is your view of the relevance or not of a formal marriage ceremony in our situation? First, be clear, it's just none of my business whether you get married. But I can tell you from considerable experience that when people are married, they feel more committed. People will commonly say to me, well, it's just a piece of paper. Well, if it's just a piece of paper, then why do you so diligently avoid it? And the people, of course, who say it's just a piece of paper aren't married. And it's not a moral judgment I'm making. I'm just telling you, it makes a difference to people. It increases their commitment. Second, he seems to prefer that you get married. So, if your partner wants something that you can provide and you don't have some overwhelming reason not to provide it, well, then it becomes a fairly obvious loving choice to make to provide your partner with that thing. It doesn't obligate you to do it. You don't have to. But if he wants it, you can't think of some flaming reason not to. It's certainly something worth considering because it matters to him. You continue. I'm afraid that our love will change after marriage, and it might. Because in addition to marriage being a commitment to each other to stay together, to learn to be loving when things are difficult, which is no small thing. People who are not married tend to split up much more easily. Poof. I mean, the marriage divorce rate is like 50%. Imagine what the separation rate is for people who are not married. People will just, on a whim, just vanish and disappear. So it increases the commitment, but marriage also has its own problems in that sometimes when people get married, they take it as a form of ownership. I'm married to you, and so now you have to, whatever, fill in the blank. So expectations tend to soar after marriage, and that's probably the biggest problem when people get married, is that now they dump all their expectations of a lifetime on this one person, whereas they're reluctant to do that entirely until they're married. You said, is it easier to love unconditionally when you're not married? It can go either way. The marriage can increase your commitment and improve your ability to learn to love unconditionally, or it can increase the expectations and just make things worse. You won't really know till you do it, will you? So the two of you are going to have to figure that out, but I would suggest you talk about it more. If it's something important to him, you'd have to provide a pretty great reason to not marry him or decide that you don't want to be with him. The next viewer says, I'm struggling with food again. I know you have some experience with this. I don't exactly know how to take that. It's really obvious from looking at you that you have food problems, which it's kind of hard to hide when you eat too much. It's kind of like somebody saying to you, I've had troubles all my life with being ugly and stupid. You know what I'm talking about, right? You continue. What I notice is that I'm catching, like out of the corner of my eye, a sense of being struggling for accurate words here. Pouty, put upon. Just a flash of insight of the underlying feeling that I am obstinately hungry and will sabotage any diet. Well, you know, I hear psychological evaluations like that, and they're just way too complicated. People aren't on a diet, and it's not like they're in the middle of losing weight and they go, I think I will self-sabotage. I hear that phrase a lot, that we self-sabotage. I think it's just ridiculous. It's not like we're ever doing well and they go, I don't think I could stand that, doing well. No, I think I'll screw things up. It's simpler than that. When we feel emotional pain or even just unease, food is a real comfort. Shoot, nothing like a bag of Cheetos, huh? It just feels good. And so it's a very easy way to dull our pain. Then you add to that the complicating factors of, oh my gosh, all that we've learned now about fat metabolism, hormones that seem to influence, regulate, cause hunger. I mean, hormones produced in the stomach of all things, and lots of other places, ghrelin and fancy names for it. Turns out that some people have a whole lot greater hunger drive than other people. It's been actually shown that in the brain that when some people eat, it just really doesn't excite them at all. Doesn't do anything for them. They did a study of scans of the brain of anorexics. When anorexics eat, they don't get the same stimulation in the pleasure centers that other people do. So lots of reasons to eat, but comfort's a big one. And then there's all that genetic stuff. So you said, today I ate fresh vegetables. I got kind of blue, so I ate a lot of them. Then I went to the hardware store, and I got this flash of stubbornness. So, you know, is it stubbornness, or is it just like, you know, dang it, I just want to eat? That's just following a desire, and I'm not attaching a value to it, good or bad. Rather than stubborn, I'm stubborn. I'm not going to follow that dang diet. I don't know if I've met anybody who does that. Because stubborn implies you're resisting somebody or something. It's not like we resist becoming thin. It's not like you're saying to somebody else, well, you can't make me be on this diet. I'm going to eat that, whatever. No, it's just discomfort. And food makes us feel good. So what do you do about it? Just note what you're feeling. Note that you eat when you're uncomfortable. Simply recognizing that we do a thing gives us greater power in making the choice. You talk here about, you know, one of the reasons that you overeat is that it then keeps people away as you get heavier. I've heard that silly explanation a bunch of times too. I eat because as I get big, my fatness keeps people away and keeps me safe. Oh my goodness, how complicated can people make things? And why don't we make it about Oedipus while we're at it? It's just kind of crazily complicated. It's just comfort. So just note it. Talk to people about it. Don't do it in secret. You know, when you have 3 Snickers bars, then when you're talking to a friend the next day, say, you know, I had 3 Snickers bars yesterday, and it's not like I was starving. I just needed them. Made me feel better. Be honest. And the more honest and loved you feel, then you tend to arrive at the optimal eating pattern. But until we feel loved, we have no clue what our proper eating pattern is. Because now we're eating to dull emotional pain. This next viewer says, lately my life has fallen to ruins. Must be from outside the United States, because that's an expression that you don't hear here. I've always felt unloved and unwanted since I was very young. I've always been a disappointment to my parents. I wish all parents could hear this and just tattoo it on their brains. Because this is the wound to a child, is the disappointment of a parent. You don't need to beat a kid to make them feel terrible. I mean, listen to this. I've always felt unloved and unwanted because I've been a disappointment to my parents. It doesn't say here he was sexually abused or beaten or locked in a closet. Disappointment is enough because it conveys, I don't love you. Then you continue. So, when I fell in love with my best friend, I felt loved for the first time. Yeah, I'll bet so. That whole falling in love thing initially is just like magical. Usually an illusion, but magical. We are a same-sex couple, and my family was not very accepting of our relationship, and therefore I kept our partnership a secret for 11 years. I mean, what kind of hurtful is that? When you feel so shamed by who you are that you'd have to keep major portions of your life secret from everybody for 11 years. And listen, those of you who are not gay and hearing this person talk about a same-sex relationship, this applies to every heterosexual relationship too. It's the same. Somebody once said to me, so why don't you write a book called Real Love for gays? And I said, and what would be different in the book? Really? What single line in the book would I change? Other than the fact that being gay then just becomes yet another thing that we feel bad about or that isolates us from people. But shoot, if it's not gay, it's going to be too short, too fat, too black, too stupid, too something. People will find something to pick at you about. And so the things that we're talking about here would apply to people in any kind of relationship, not just gay ones. Then you continue. I damaged the relationship with my partner by telling people that we were just friends. She finally had it and said that although she loves me, she's not in love with me anymore. I realize I made many mistakes and that I've only loved her conditionally. On the other hand, she loved me unconditionally, but in the last 4 months, she has changed a lot. It would be really unlikely that you, having been raised in a conditionally loving environment where you feel miserable about yourself, it would be very unlikely that you would attract a partner who is unconditionally loving. The odds are infinitesimal, just about zero. And you identify her perhaps as being unconditionally loving because she's less, whatever, less attacking, less victim-y, less clinging, less whatever. And so by comparison to you, she appears to be unconditionally loving. But then you say, in the last 4 months, she has changed a lot. Not very common that you're going to find somebody who is truly unconditionally loving and then over a period of 4 months, poof, loses that quality. You continue. She keeps telling me that I'm very important to her, but that she doesn't think that we can make it work. I feel depressed and hopeless. I spent the last 4 months crying and feeling horrible. The only person that ever loved me does not want me anymore. Yeah, that's a terrible feeling. I've become jealous, possessive, needy, and I feel like she's becoming more distant. Wow, it's no real mystery why she'd be distant, is it? Here you are, clinging and desperate and needy and demanding and jealous. You know, who wants to be close to or have a relationship with, in this case, the all-consuming claw? It's a cycle of demanding and avoiding that is just horrible. And again, for those who are not gay, this is the same stuff everybody experiences. You continue. I'm sure she's avoiding me. She says I stress her, and she tries not to be home until she needs to go to sleep. Yeah, that would be avoiding. I don't know what to do. I feel like dying. I thought of killing myself often lately. I am paranoid that she's found someone else. Paranoid to be alone. I want her to love me again so much I can't function anymore. And see, there in a single paragraph or phrase or sentence, even the last phrase, is the whole problem. Is you're entirely focused on you. Look what she does to me. Look what she's not giving to me. And you know, when you're in a relationship and one partner's just going me as fast as they can talk, well, they either become prisoners to that person who's saying me, or they disappear. They just go, I'm out of here. And she's tired of it. Now, I'm not blaming you. The only reason people are selfish, saying me, is that nobody ever fed them. People who are starving to death are pretty selfish. People who are drowning are selfish because their needs are so great. So I understand why you do it, but it's really important to slow down and see how unloving you are being, and to know that there's a cure. There's something you can do about this. So I had a conversation the other day with a woman who was a victim, and all she talked about was her not getting what she wanted and her being hurt. And I tried to help her see how selfish she was being. And I even said to her, I've had conversations with you before, and when I talk to you about you being a victim, as you're being here, I said, when I've talked to you, you've either then avoided me, sulked, not spoken to me, attacked me, cried, manipulated me with guilt, and so you don't hear what I'm saying. And then she immediately did all those things. She sulked. She wouldn't talk to me. So then when I tried to get her to speak so that she would understand what I was saying, then she attacked me. And then she cried and said, I'm doing my best. And she said, I've never liked you, which I understand. But she did everything except tell the truth about herself, not realizing that the instant we do that, we begin a process of freedom. Hello? What you've been saying here so far is, my girlfriend doesn't this and she doesn't that and she avoids me and she, me. It all stops when you say, wow, I am really being selfish and unloving. Then it becomes possible for you to do something about it. Then it becomes possible for you to tell the truth about yourself to other people. You can read the books, you can watch the video DVDs, you can talk to people on the conference calls, you could get a coach. There's lots of things you could do so that somebody would help you tell the truth about you, how you're manipulative, how you act like a victim, how you attack, how you withdraw, how you cling. And then, as you tell the truth about you and they unconditionally love you, you can begin to fill up just enough that you don't have to squeeze your partner to death. And when you quit squeezing your partner and trying to suck the life out of her, then it may become possible for your partner to relax and actually give you some love freely. But she's not going to enjoy it while you're demanding it. So really it's all about whatever effort you're willing to make to change the way you see the world and the way that you live. It's worth it. Next viewer says, I've been wondering how to put into practice your advice about getting my husband to pay his way. One question is whether I should expect him to go 50-50 or should I pay more since I earn more than he does. I feel mean and petty when I make him pay for stuff. Some authors talk about living from abundance, and making my husband pay his way seems counter to that. I struggle to get my head around loving him unconditionally, yet making him pay his way. I've got to learn a lot to learn still. So again, it's about loving and teaching. If he's doing the best he can, he's working a 40-hour week, he's up doing all that he can do, looking possibly for a better job, but he's doing what he can, and you simply make more money because, I don't know, you were born into it, you have a better education, I don't care, but you're making more than he is. Let's say you're making 70% of the money. He's working hard as he can, but he's making 30% of the money in the family. Well, then it is about sharing. That's what marriage is. It's a partnership. And so then you just throw everything you've got into the pot and you share completely equally in everything. Just because you're smarter or have better job skills, you can't then expect him to make up 50% of the income. But it becomes a little different if, and this is very common, and I can't really tell from what you say or what's the case, but it becomes different when you've got a partner who isn't working, who isn't doing anything. And I hear about these partners all the time. They lie around on the couch all day. They get up at 2 in the afternoon. Then they play video games. Then they surf the internet for porn. They wait for you to get home to fix dinner. They do nothing. These people are all over the place. They're usually men, like 80% of the time. But every once in a while, you find women who do this. If he's not doing anything, then there are a number of steps that you can go through. First, I'd go on the internet, look up, you can just Google depression symptoms and see if he's depressed. Go through the list of questions to ask somebody who might be depressed, see if that applies to him. If he's depressed, then get him treated. Then sometimes people will say, well, but he doesn't want to go into the doctor. Well, then, I've actually advocated in some cases that if somebody's depressed and they won't work, I've advocated that their partner move out or throw their partner out until they get treated. Because if you've got a partner who's clinically depressed, nothing's possible. They're not going to get a job. They're not going to be close to you. They're not going to be a supportive partner. They're not going to be a supportive parent. It just makes everything impossible. It's serious enough. What if your partner fell down and had a heart attack and was dying? And he said, oh, no, don't call the ambulance. Would you not? Of course you would. Call the ambulance anyway. And they would just strap him on a gurney and haul him off to the hospital. Well, same with depression. I've even advocated on an occasion that a partner go in and talk to their own doctor, get a prescription. This isn't legal. Get the pills or the capsule or whatever it is, break it up into their food and feed it to them. If you've got a partner clinically depressed, life's pretty much over. Then talk to him. Now, if it's not depression, then you move on to the next step. If it is depression, you treat that, and then you move on to talking to him about finding a job. Not just saying, how come you haven't gone to get a job? What a waste of breath. No, ask real questions. Ask him what keeps you from going. What kind of fears do you have? Because if they don't go, they're having fears. So is it that you're afraid of writing up a resume? Are you afraid of the job interviews? Because for every one of those fears, there's something you can do. I've helped lots of people who just were terrified of getting a new job because, for example, they hadn't ever done a resume. So I just help them write a resume. Poof, they find a job. They don't know how to do an interview. So I practice being their boss and ask them interview questions based on what job they're applying for. Address whatever the fears are, because it's about fear almost all the time. So then let's say that you've done all that. He's not depressed. You talk to him about getting a job, and he just says, I'm going to lie on the couch till I die, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, then I would start, like I was talking about earlier for a child. What we do is when people make stupid choices, we then tend to pay the consequences for them. What's wrong with us? How's anybody going to learn anything? I know a guy who's 35 years old. His parents gave him all the money that he needs. And so why should he get a job? He's not paying the consequences of being lazy, being a bum. So he just sits back and takes their checks. Well, who wouldn't? I want that job. So then you start allowing him to experience the luxuries that go along with what he's doing. In other words, none. So you would cut off the cable, cut off the newspaper, cut off the internet connection, everything, because you just refuse to pay for it. And, of course, you would have to suffer with this also, but no cell phone, nothing. If he's not going to work, then he doesn't get the luxuries in life. You just feed him, gruel in the morning, whatever's really inexpensive. And when he says, why are we eating this for the fifth day in a row? And you say, this is all we can afford. You don't need to deliver a lecture. He knows the reason. that you're saying this is all we can afford. And you start cutting back, enough, then he's either going to get to the point where he's going to want to go get a job, or you move to the next step. Because I've done this with many couples, to where you've got a guy who just will not work. He's content to sit there and eat oatmeal for 3 meals a day with no cable, no television, no nothing, and he just refuses to work. Well, then throw the bum out. Or you move out and you say, I'm not separating from you with the purpose of divorcing you. I'm separating from you because you do not understand the consequences of not working, and I'm going to allow you to experience them. That's all. People then tend to say, well, look what you're doing to me. Or with incredible hypocrisy, they'll say, look what you're doing to our family. Of course, they leave out the part of what they're not working is doing to the family. But you're not doing anything to him. You're finally allowing him to experience the consequences of his own lazy, irresponsible choices. I've seen this work both ways. I've seen people then, after they were separated, wake up and go, wow, I really had it good when I was with my partner who's a hard worker, get a job, and then go back with their partner. But then I've also seen people refuse to work for the rest of their lives and stay on government assistance, in which case he gets to move on and have his own life, doesn't he? But it's important that we not, on an ongoing basis, rescue people from choices that are awful. This next viewer says, my boyfriend's daughter is 14 years old. He's having some difficulty with her. She's not very motivated. Well, if she's 14, you would have difficulty. It's a terrible age. He's not very motivated, and just lately, she's not very motivated. And just lately, she told him that she would like to quit school. I'm suggesting to them that they order the book Real Love and Parenting, but what can they do in the meantime? So when a kid says, I want to quit school, because I have counseled with uncounted kids who have said something like that. I want to quit school. We tend to say, oh no, you can't quit school. Or, well, school's not so bad. Well, we tend to fix them. We don't listen. So if I said to you, if I were on the phone with you and I said, stop, I can't continue the phone call, I'm running out of the house. If I said I was running out of the house to you on the phone, what would you then say? Would you say, oh no, don't run out of the house? No, you'd say, why are you running out of the house? I'd say, well, the house is on fire. Well, good choice then, huh? So much more productive to ask a child, why do you want to quit school? Just call. Not in the way that we sometimes do. Parents are famous for this. They think they're asking questions because the sentence ends in a question mark or because it goes up at the end, but they're not. Like when a parent says, why did you do that? That's not a question. It's an attack. It's an assassination. And same with, so why do you want to quit school? Not, well, why do you want to quit school? Well, it's not a question, and the kid's not even going to answer. So what bothers you about school? Because almost invariably, I've done this with kids. There's a reason why. Let's see, my boyfriend quit school, and so he and I are going to go have sex like bunnies for the rest of our lives and support each other in a cardboard box. Or I'm quitting school because I hate my classmates. I just hate them all. I'm quitting school because I hate the teachers. I quit school because it's boring. Whatever. Explore the reason. I mean, as soon as you're genuinely listening, I hear this from parents all the time. They bring their kid in, and they've been trying to talk to this kid for years. And I talk to the kid for an hour, and the kid's just chatting up a storm with me. And the parent says, well, what did you do? Listened. It's not complicated. If you really listen, your kid will usually tell you. Then you can talk about potential solutions for each of the problems. So she says, well, I just hate all the other girls at school. They're just cliquish little snotty little brats, and I hate them all. Well, okay. well, describe their behavior to me. Tell me, what do they say? How do they act? What do they do? Then you can help your daughter, or in this case your boyfriend's daughter, understand why people behave in that way. Simply understanding their behavior is huge. Then you can go through little scenarios and give her suggestions about what she might do when somebody treats her hatefully and despitefully, as kids often do with each other in school. Now you're listening. You're proposing possible solutions to her, rather than saying, okay, now go to school and do this. That doesn't fly very well. That might fly when they're, 4, but not when they're 14. So lots of ways you can address this, as opposed to getting all excited and up in arms. So I would suggest you do that until you get the parenting book, which supplies all the rest of the answers. Here's a viewer who says, I'm currently reading Real Love and Marriage, and it opens my mind about my failing marriage. Just 2 days ago, my husband proposed a divorce. I think our relationship lacks real love. Yeah, probably so. And it's a good thing to remember that that is the thing, that it's not all the profusion of peripheral issues. It's not about sex, money, the kids, the housework, blah, 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 blah. It really is. It's about love, as you have identified. Just keep remembering that so you don't get distracted by all the peripheral issues. You continue. We're constantly quarreling over small matters. And I started to use getting and protecting behaviors. Of course you did. I will hurt myself sometimes to gain his attention, his care, whenever we're in an argument. And we'll get to how you hurt yourself in a minute, I'm guessing. In return, he then gets even angrier. I admit that most times I'm just too selfish. I expect his love, and then I blow up over small issues. For his part, there are 2 things he cannot stand. First, if I wear too short or too tight dresses and skirts. And second is when I talk to guys or add them on Facebook. Just 2 days ago, we had a heated argument over a small matter, and it turned nasty, and I poured hot tea over my hands. Oh, so that's how you hurt yourself. For those who don't understand that, it's really pretty common for people to injure themselves. Pour hot boiling water over their hands, cut themselves, intentionally fall down, and there's a long list of reasons why people would do that. Sometimes we hurt ourselves because it's the only way that we know how to express pain. We've never been in an environment where somebody showed us how to honestly and clearly express how we feel. When you behave in that way, I feel empty, I feel afraid, and then I react with anger and by clinging or withdrawing. See how clear that is? That's clear. When was the last time you heard somebody speak like that in real life? Outside of real love circles, not a chance. And so we bottle up our feelings, and they come out in all kinds of ways. Explosive rages, we may throw things, and one of the things we may do is hurt ourselves. Cut ourselves, in this case, pouring hot tea over our hands. It also is kind of a way of our demonstrating, one of the potential mechanisms for it, is demonstrating externally how we feel about ourselves inside. Flawed, cut, damaged. It also gets attention. You hurt yourself and suddenly you're surrounded by help. You attempt to kill yourself. You slit your wrists. Oh, man, now you've gone from being utterly invisible to we have paramedics, and we have an ambulance driver, and we have emergency room personnel and a psychiatrist. Instant attention. So a lot of different reasons. That's just a few for injuring ourselves. Unfortunately, none of the things we get from injuring ourselves are love. And so we're pretty much doomed to doing it again and again. You continue. When I got home, I added a university guy friend on my Facebook out of anger. And then he got very mad when he realized what I'd done. And he asked for a divorce. I went to find him the next day hoping to resolve our conflict. And he said he wanted to be left alone, I think due to my insecurity. And I pushed him away further by refusing to let him be alone. And then, you just kind of go on and on about how this just goes back and forth and back and forth. One of you's got to break this cycle. And since you're the one writing, it's going to have to be you. So you study what real love is. You've done that. You've read the book. You need a connection with people who can unconditionally love you. You need the feeling of being loved, not just the idea of it. Having the concept is good. I mean, it's good to understand what real love is versus what you've gotten all your life and what you're giving. But you need to feel it, because until you do, you're not going to have any to pass on to your husband. When you get sufficiently empty and afraid, you become desperate and you start acting crazy. Pouring tea over your hands and intentionally putting guy friends on your Facebook when you know it enrages your husband, that's pretty insane. And when we're empty and afraid, we are insane. No kidding. We're not in our right mind. So I'm not picking at you or laughing at you. It's just a description. So the question is, do you want to keep it up? Well, I wouldn't think so. So you talk to people on the conference calls, which are on the website. You get a coach. You do whatever it takes to find people who can unconditionally love you. And then once you feel loved enough, and you might even be able to try this before you feel entirely loved, you start making conscious decisions about what could I do that would be more loving toward him. The more loving we attempt to be toward other people, the more we connect ourselves to that infinite supply of love. We feel more loved when we love other people, even if they don't return it to us. So in this case, you know that it bothers him if you wear dresses or skirts that are too tight or too short. Well, then talk to him about it. And instead of fighting him and then, going into your closet and intentionally picking some little short, tight skirt just to get him, you bring him into your closet and you say, so I would like to be as loving as I can possibly be with you. And instead of fighting you, let me get an idea of what too short is for you. So you put on 3-4 skirts or dresses or whatever and say, so what's too short? Then once you have that, have that in mind, you say, I'm going to make a conscious, unconditional gift to you that I'm not going to wear dresses or skirts shorter than that anymore. You decide. Now, you don't have to give him everything he wants. Let's say that I'm making this up obviously, but let's say he defines too short as this far above your knee. And you say, well, I couldn't quite go with that, but I'll give you this. Whatever, but you make a conscious choice to be loving toward him. You say, now, show me what you mean by too tight. I would think you'd already know the answer to this, but if the purpose of the skirt is to accentuate you in a sexually attractive way, not just pretty way, but where guys go, whoa, did you see that? That's not just being pretty. It's intentionally attracting sexual observations and thoughts and comments and behavior. You know what too tight is, but if you want to work it out with him, say, all right, let me go through 6 skirts and dresses. Which of these is too tight? And again, you offer him the unconditional gift of what you're willing to offer and get rid of those clothes. So we're always looking for the way that we can be more loving. When it comes to having men friends, for example, you might say to him, all right, so which men do you feel uncomfortable with me phoning, texting, Facebooking, whatever? It would be kind of obvious that if it was a past sexual relationship, that seems like a no-brainer. You say to him, okay, we got Fred, John, Bill, Stuart, whoever. These 5 guys I've had sex with in the past, so I will have no more contact with these guys ever. Why? Not because I have to, but because it's a loving act toward you. It's being sensitive to your fears. That would be a loving thing for you to do. And then you take them off your Facebook and you make it so it's impossible for them to access you in any way. Then you might even say, so are there any particular other male relationships that I have that bother you? And offer him, whatever you decide. 3 more, 5, 6, 2 other men that you're willing to exclude from your life simply because he feels insecure around them. But for him to demand that you never talk to another man for the rest of your life, that becomes pretty controlling. There's reasonable fears, reasonable concerns, like you're flirting with, old sexual partners. And then there's just, kind of obsessively controlling, which is you can't talk to another man. Well, that really makes it pretty tough, doesn't it? Because now he's going to be quizzing you and questioning you and doubting you all the time. Because there will be men who are going to call you for whatever reasons, and you don't want to have to be explaining your behavior constantly. So you get the drift. It's exploring how we can be more loving. That's what makes a difference in our relationship. So look for that, and look for other people to love you rather than be fussing about the little issues on and on. And then I suggest you read the marriage book together. The two of you need a way that you can build your relationship rather than just be caught in an endless cycle of conflicts or even just avoiding conflicts. Just because we successfully avoid conflicts doesn't mean our relationship's great. So think about building. I don't know if you remember, but it was last week or the week before. Can't remember which. I think it was last week. I responded to a question from a 24-year-old who was still living at home, and I wasn't sure if it was a guy or a girl, but I learned that later, who was feeling guilty about being dependent on her parents. And I suggested that she practice being accountable to some real love people and set some kind of goal. I'd like to be out of the house on my own by blank, a certain date. After I talked about that on the video chat, she wrote again, and she said this: in hearing your response to my question on the last video chat, you provided a realization that surprised me. I had always believed that my fear of independence was the direct result of missed social experiences. But now I see that even more of a factor in my fear were the messages my parents gave me about the world itself. As a child, I was what I would consider to be a pretty rational kid. I got over the usual fantasies at a fairly early age, despite my parents' insistence that I believe in them, and that's, just some of the usual stuff that kids believe in. And I'm not going to say what it is because there are some little kids who are watching this, and I'm not going to ruin the fantasy for them. I never enjoyed cartoons or horror films because I didn't think that they were realistic. I seemed to question everything in life except my parents' assertion. Now note this. Here's a kid who's really rational, who really thinks, but she never questioned her parents and what they taught her. Of course not. From the time we're born, we're around these fully developed adults who tell us how the world is. When would we ever stop to question them? When parents tell us that a thing is so, there's no 4-year-old who goes, well, let's think about this. Could we look at this in a more rational way? No, we just accept their view. So like you said here, I didn't question my parents' assertion that the world is a terrible, dangerous place that I should avoid. Even though I'm old enough now to know intellectually this is not true, emotionally, I have internalized that message and still navigate life as a frightened little kid. There are a lot of ways to look at this, and what you've just said is really valuable to every parent who's listening. Parents communicate to their children that the world is a frightening and dangerous place by just doing little things like just that little quizzical, doubting, skeptical look that they give their children when they do things like suggest that they spend the night at a friend's. Well, now, as soon as the parent goes, ooh, well, now, what's the child hearing? Ooh. there's something scary about spending the night at a friend's. Or the child says, well, I can walk, from here to school. And the parent goes, ooh. Just that pause, that look of doubt. And then, of course, parents come back with, well, now, we can't allow a child to do things like that because he might be kidnapped by sexual predators. You know what the odds are of any given child being kidnapped by a sexual predator who is not their relative? About the odds of winning the lottery. No kidding. We make a great big deal about it. And when it happens, it's truly a horrible thing. But I assert that a great deal more aggregate damage is done to all of the millions of children who are told, beware of strangers. Watch out for the guy behind the tree. Don't get out of my sight because you might be kidnapped by somebody who will touch you, down there. We scare our kids. We teach our kids that the world is a frightening place and they have to be on guard all the time. Yeah, sure, those things might happen, but the tone we use is everything. We taught our kids, hey, look, be careful. There are some, real nut jobs out there who aren't loving, who wouldn't take care of you like we do. So, somebody comes along in a car and says, get in the car. You go, nah, I'll go home. And then you just run home. You don't need to be afraid. You just have to go, there are some crazies out there. You don't need to worry about it. But don't get in other people's cars. Don't take candy from somebody you don't know. When you walk into your friend's house and somebody says, I'll give you a ride, unless it's me, you say no. How complicated is that? And then there may be certain of your relatives that you tell them to avoid too. But this business of making kids afraid is just awful. A kid goes to ride a bike in the street, you go, ooh, you'll be hit by a car. So you just explain carefully why they need to be careful when they're in the street. And when they first go to ride, you be out there for the first 20 times or so. But kids have to learn to be independent. And scaring them is not going to do it. We're raising a generation of kids now who are just crippled. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to do things on their own. They're afraid of other people. Their closest intimate contact with people is texting them. This isn't healthy. It's not good. And it's important that we give our kids, lots of things that they can do that have potential little dangers, because then they know they can handle danger. So, we learned with my own kids, man, we just did stuff all the time. We taught them to use slingshots and arrows and throw knives, and they made potato guns. If you don't know what a potato gun is, ask your kid. I had two boys. I'm not necessarily recommending you go this far, but I had two boys who made pipe bombs and set them off in the backyard. You tell your kids no all the time, not only do they not feel like they're competent, but they grow to be afraid of everything, like you're describing here. So your comments are just very useful. You continue, as strange as it may sound, I never considered asking for help in this process of becoming independent. I think part of that comes from past experiences of feeling like a burden when I did ask for help. And you point out something that all parents could learn from. Let our children be as independent as possible. But when they do say, well, I need help with something, if we're lying on the couch watching TV and we go, well, what does the kid hear? You're a bother. And so they're not likely to ask the next time. You continue, as a child, I often found my mom alone, crying, and when I asked her what was wrong, she'd repeat a quote she once read in a self-help book. Oh, these always kill me. A mother is only as happy as her unhappiest child. Oh, never mind, doesn't matter what self-help book. What a horrifying thing to say. That'd be like, that self-help book was probably entitled The Handbook for Codependence. Horrible. As soon as a child sees that we're unhappy because of something they've done, we just turned over to our children the responsibility for making us happy, and that just cripples a kid. You continue, as her unhappiest child, I felt entirely responsible for her happiness, and I still carry a lot of that feeling with me today. So, duh, no wonder you live there at home with Mom, because if you left, Mom might be lonely. Mom might miss you. She might not feel indispensable, and all these things are crippling to a kid. You finish with, although as an adult I'm capable of making choices independent of past experience, seeing the exact source of this fear may make it easier to move forward in a better direction. The only way I can unlearn my parents' message that the world is evil and scary is to go out there and see for myself and be loved in the process. Boy, are you the bright little student, the teacher's pet, huh? You really do. You do get it. And this is the only reason that I talk to people about understanding where their emptiness and fear came from. I have no intent to convince people that their parents failed them, their parents did it wrong. But if we don't see that pretty much all the emptiness and fear and unproductive behaviors in our lives were learned in childhood, how do we begin to undo them? We begin to think that it's just part of us, that we're just angry people, that we're just victims, that we're just clingers. No, we need to be taught that we learned these feelings and behaviors, and if we learned them, and if we were taught them inappropriately, we can now be taught correctly and unlearn those behaviors, which is, of course, very freeing. So I don't really have time to do the next question, so I won't. Been a delight being with you. We're going to be out of town the next Tuesday. So I won't be here a week from today, but I will be here, so spread the word, if you would. But we will be here 2 weeks from today. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. We look forward to it. And between now and then, remember that it's always about real love. See you then.